Welcome to the first ever podcast with Aspyre Entertainment. Today I am joined with Dark, Emma, and we're going to go ahead and talk about some paranormal activity stuff. So from here on out, all of our podcast structure is going to be basically focusing more so on our personalities rather than entertainment and game sources and stuff like that. So we're going to go ahead and share a little bit more about our stories and our experiences. So then that way you guys get to know us a little bit better than what previously would when we were related to Stream Fiends. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy, and we'll go ahead and hop right into this. So for those of you, I guess I know that some people don't really believe in ghosts and paranormal stuff and everything. I guess like a really easy beginning conversation to have is like how, like, I'm imagining all of us kind of believe in some shape or form of paranormal activity and ghosts and all of that. So I guess we'll start there. Like, does anybody, like, are they kind of like on the fence, or are we all pretty much agreeing that like paranormal activity does exist and that ghosts exist?
For me personally, I would say like I'm more on the I know and I've seen so much of it in my past that I would say I've seen too much to say that I wouldn't know. Like, I know for sure there's at least something out there.
I feel that. That's pretty much the exact same way with me. Like my childhood home was very overrun with like paranormal activity, which we'll get into later. But 100%, yeah, I have to agree.
I definitely think that's real. I think like ghosts can attach themselves to people too. I know there's like my mom always had ghosts around her, which is how I learned about them and got into that. I think it also kind of translates into other things because like I read tarot cards, and I think that my spirits are a very big part of that, and they help me make decisions a lot. Just like, not because ghosts and everything aren't always bad. I think there's definitely like spirit guides as well, and that if you believe in them, you might as well like try to contact your spirit guides and all that. So yeah.
I 100% believe in all things paranormal. I practice, like, I'm a practicing witch. I don't generally bring a lot of spirit work into my personal practice, because I think then you're kind of, like, I personally feel like that's kind of, you're opening yourself up to a lot. And that's just risks that I'm not willing to take, and I would rather kick it with my rocks and my leaves. But 100%.
There's currently a Ouija board in my attic, so like
A Ouija board in your attic?
Yeah.
Is that what?
Yeah, it's mine. Like I own it.
Deuces.
Yeah, I've played it alone a few times. I know that's like the first rule is don't play it alone, and I've done it. So
I got a Ouija board.
Pinnacle of demonic.
I know.
Like, pulling into a household.
Well, you want to know what's like the worst part of it all? Every time I played it by myself, it always went ZO, which is if that happens, you're supposed to immediately close it.
Love it.
So it would start normal and then like immediately start that. And so I was like, okay, we are done with that. And haven't opened it since.
I got a Ouija board for like, I think I was in 6th grade-ish for Christmas. That's like the one thing I asked for. My mom was like, what is wrong with you? But she got it for me. And I used to play it like all the time with with 2 of my friends, and we play at my one friend's house, and there was one like really bad experience, and ever since then I just left it at my friend's house. I think it was like my freshman year of high school, so it's been like 11 years, and it stays in a house in her room that has been locked for like 10 years.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well,
which is probably why I don't bring spirit work into my own personal practice.
So I guess we'll kind of like go and segue into now talking more so about personal stories and everything, and why we so heavily believe in ghosts and all of that. So I guess to start, we'll start with dark stories today.
So to start, when I was younger, um, we lived in a like small little apartment, and it was over here actually in Tustin more than anything. So like an area that isn't known for crime, isn't known for like death all that much. It's like one of the safer parts of like Orange County. And we as soon as we moved in, we knew that it just felt kind of off. It didn't feel right. We finally, like, after asking the management like 5 times, they always gave us vague stories of what happened in the house. And one of the ones we actually got from them is somebody somebody did a um sadly enough, they suffocated their parents in the back room where my mom slept. With They literally suffocated their own parents with their own pillows when they were asleep in that back like dark weird side room that my mom was living in. And then in the hallway, it's a weird hallway than like most apartments or houses. It's a long, like super squeezed in hallway, and then bathroom on the side, room which is my mom's room on the far end, and then my room off to the right. But it was weird because you don't really see like too many like super narrow, very small like hallways, and it was always dark. Like no matter what kind of the part of the day, it was just always pitch black like down that hallway. And
Are you sure
since
you didn't
my
live on like a horror movie set?
Oh my every day we lived there, we wanted to get out. But it was one of those things we were like, we already bought it, we already settled down, then that's it. If we have to deal with like ghosts or any of that other stuff or just anything creepy in the house, we just had to deal with it. We just basically got in there. But because of that event, now it made more sense. But we didn't even get that information for like unless a year into our actual living there. So it took us like a full year to figure it out, as like little things were happening through the house. And it started with like every once in a while you'd hear a knock, and then it would like be stable for like a week, and then you'd hear another knock, maybe a few more than normal, and then throughout the year, because whatever was in the house felt like very calm, I guess, around us in that sense, it got a little too jumpy later on through the year. And then when we finally found out what would happen, it's like it spiked its activity because it finally knew what we knew in a sense. So it would go from knocks, and then it would go from like really slow closing of the bathroom doors. And the bathroom that we all shared, it's in that hallway, and there's no breeze that can get in that hallway. It's just a dead little hallway. So we were like, okay, there's no effing way that this door is going to be moving. There's no breeze. No, we don't have the ACs on, all that stuff. And then, so a little past that, it's the same old knocks and doors kind of slowly moving and like closing and opening. And then I would say we lived there for like 8 years. So by like the 6th or 7th year, that's when stuff's really started spiking. And it was, in my room, I had one of those closets with the mirrors, like mirror doors.
Mhm.
And I'd always see like crazy scary shit, like faces with like red eyes or like glowing yellow eyes in the mirrors at like pitch black at night. And then the one that made us like actually jump and like really think hard about moving out of that place was my mom heard scratching on her wall behind her, and her bed supposedly was faced the same way as the old parents that had passed away. So in that same
Sorry.
format it was laid down. Oh, you're good. So in a sense, to us, we're hearing like death scratches, like trying to grab for things.
Oh,
kind of
shut the
thing.
fuck up.
Yeah, you could
That's
hear,
creepy.
like, you could tell that it's like someone grabbing some, like, just trying to get to something to like
Like when
prevent
they were
it from
being like
happening.
smothered
Yeah.
and they were.
Yeah.
Oh
So
no!
you can hear like we heard like like almost like a scratch, and then like a missed scratch, and then
Ugh.
you'd hear like a knock, like as if they were trying to push off, and then more scratches but longer. So it was just creepy, and it's like just an invisible like hand, like you don't know where this is coming from. It's literally behind my mom's like backboard of her bed. And then so that was creepy enough. And then 2 nights after that, I ended up having like a super poltergeist where we came out to the living room, and it's like, oh yeah, like people are gonna be like, oh yeah, no, this is like every common story, but this one actually happened. So that happened 2 nights later. We come out to the living room, we heard a bunch of crashing. Pots and pans and all of our spices were thrown out of the cupboards, and all of the cupboards were completely open. And no one's home. It was literally just my cat at the time, and my
Definitely the
cat
cat.
can't even get up there. He was such a baby that like if he tried to jump, he'd smack his face on like the front end of the like jump up to the counter. So there was no way in hell that
Buddy.
he'd get up there.
Poor cat.
And then it gets better though. So an extra 2 nights after that, me and my mom both, if she's correct on this, because I was a little young, so it's vague to me nowadays, but the 2 nights after, me and her both saw like some super demonic like black mass that had like super red glowing eyes. And remember how I was saying like the closet, that's what scared the actual shit out of me most than anything, because it's a mirror, like super easy slide closet, and you would think, oh, it's maybe sometimes it'll just kind of like drag open and drag close. That thing was heavy. The thing was not moving. Mine started moving last night, like not last night, but that night, and I saw that black mass peeking around the corner in full, like, just dark, like, more dark than normal kind of thing. You could tell, like, the difference between, like, there's just black and then, like, a mass. And the mass was sitting in the corner of the closet, peeking around, scaring me as a kid.
Mhm.
And then my mom saw the same mass, but it was peeking through the actual wall out the side, and the side of that wall that she was seeing it from is it's a balcony drop off. So there's like poles there, but there's no actual like floor for a balcony. So it was either a person with a good ass grapple hook and some good gear, or that creepy ass like super dark mass that was just peeking through a wall at her with no drop off on it at all. And then we finally moved out, came to this building where we're at now, and the only thing I've personally seen or heard in here at least is like very small remote knocks, but that house was like just demented. Like there was way too much stuff going on in that one specific place. Like
Yeah.
we knew there was more than just like one killing in that house. There was way too much activity for just a one timer.
If you got, since like you guys lived there for so long, if you like had people over, like would it act up at all having like strangers in the house?
That's the weird thing is no. Anytime we had some new guests, it actually did the opposite. It's like whatever demonic entity or whatever it was, it didn't want to be known to anybody else except for just us. Like anybody would come over and stay the night. That was like the one night we knew, like, it's gonna be a super calm night. Nothing is gonna act up. It'll shut its mouth for one night. Fine.
Got it. That's just wild to me.
I
That
have-
really is. Like, so going like back to what you were saying. So there's the scratching noises, and then there's also like the dark black figure.
Mhm.
I think you're right on the whole side of things being where there were multiple things that happened. I think that the scratching and stuff is definitely associated to the parents or whatever, but I really
Right.
feel like that darker presence is not related to the whole
No.
smothering instance like at all, because it had to be something that, like, I don't know, like especially with it being, I guess, more so like attached to like the closet and like mirrors and stuff. I don't know. I just don't feel like that was like, I don't know. It's just like weird. I don't know.
It was definitely not anything that was like, oh yeah, like I have just a ghost amount. Like no, this was
Yeah.
something like extremely dark, and you could tell it was dark because you'd always feel like that creepy like if you walk in like an abandoned like apartment or something like that, just out of the blue, you can feel before you walk in there if it's something like more chill, and you're just gonna get a few knocks out of like the building,
Yeah.
or like you can get something thrown at you, and the
Yeah.
whatever entity it is not gonna give a shit about you or anybody else in there.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if like that dark negative energy is kind of what pushed that kid to end up murdering his parents.
I was
know
gonna
What I
say,
was
like,
thinking.
That's like.
did
a
you
feeling.
guys ever get like irrationally like angry or
Yeah.
just emotions that just did not feel like you?
Never really got like mad or depressed or anything. It was just like, I think it's also because I was younger and my mom was still like,
Yeah.
she believed in paranormal stuff back then, but it wasn't as strong. So I think we kind of like kept pushing it away so
Yeah.
much because we were like believers but also non-believers at the time, because we were so 50-50 about it, that I think whatever spiritual entity tried to either attach to me or my mother, and it didn't work because we were just like, nah, fuck off. Like every time we were just like, go away.
Yeah.
Do you know what happened to the kid that, or the not kid, I guess, but whoever like killed his parents?
The kid at that time, I think he ended up getting arrested
Okay.
and then serving a certain amount of jail time. We tried to do research on like where and what happened. It didn't say anything per se because it was such like a local like non-story. And the other thing with like when you live in OC, if you're living outside of LA, like LA County or like Hollywood or any of those, they try to wrap up stories and leave them super incognito. Like unless you know that person's like personally, they're not gonna let you know shit. So we tried to do our research, try to talk to as many people, all that stuff, and there was just all we knew and we could find is he got jailed, but we don't know if like he died.
So
in
before we
prison.
go into M's story, we're gonna take a quick break for some of our sponsors related to Rogue Energy.
Wow, what an amazing commercial that was. I would definitely like that product and or service.
Yes. We already have it. Okay, what do you have for us?
So I've definitely always believed in ghosts. I grew up in New Jersey, and I mean, we would go to vacations in like Boston, Salem, Williamsburg, just like a ton of old shit. But like I always believed, but I don't think I necessarily experienced a ton as a child. The house that I grew up in was built in like the 80s, and there have only been two owners, the guy who owned it previously and then like my parents. So not a whole lot of opportunity for a haunted house. No one was murdered. The only tragedy that happened was the bathrooms were carpeted and the living room had black paneling, and my mom had a breakdown while pregnant and just ripped out all the walls. Yeah, the only tragedy there was the interior decorating.
I can't get over carpeted bathroom.
Oh, it was
sounds
raunchy.
heinous.
Like my parents, my mom is a very tasteful person. I think she's over the years made truly a beautiful home. And then I see some of the before pictures and I'm like, how did you do anything with this?
Oh my God.
This is horrible.
Do they still live there in the same house?
Mhm.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they moved there when I was like 2 years old, because we used to have like a 1920s like smaller house, and it was just me and my brother, but they wanted to grow the family, so my mom said either we move or like build an addition, and my dad heard we move, so they got a new house. But I think like in my personal life, I'm gonna say the most it's not like a haunting. This isn't a negative experience. She's just kind of there. But this little girl, so I had a lot of sleep paralysis in my life. Like it just kind of happened. They were mostly like auditory hallucinations. But yeah, like pretty much all auditory hallucinations. And they were like kind of standard. They sucked, but I dealt with it. And then as I got older, it kind of like petered away. And then I think this was 3 years ago, we were still living in Columbus. And I woke up, and like it wasn't dark or anything. And like I could not move. And like it didn't necessarily feel like normal sleep paralysis to me, like in my experience. And I looked and I was like laying on my side facing the closet, and there was this little girl standing in front of the closet, like clear as day, probably like 9-ish years old, long brown hair, like big brown eyes. And she wasn't like being are you laughing at smudges?
Mhm.
she wasn't like being creepy or anything outside of just being a child that I did not birth standing in my home. And she just kind of like walked up to me until she was eye level with my face, like we were this far apart. And then like I woke up and she wasn't there. And it was just like, it wasn't scary. It was unsettling. But like she didn't feel threatening. And I didn't really think anything of it. And I didn't mention it to Zach because like I said, like I have sleep paralysis all the time. It's fine, whatever. And like a month-ish, month and a half maybe later, it was like a Saturday and Zach woke up and he was like, I had the weirdest shit happen last night. What are you talking about? So he had sleep paralysis, but he was laying on his side facing where we used to have a mirror in the corner.
The same mirror that's right here.
Right
next. Yeah. The same one.
And our bed that we had, like the headboard was kind of thick because like there were shelves on the side, like maybe 8-9 inches thick. So he was looking into the mirror and he saw a little girl standing on the headboard just like looking down at me. And I asked him what she looked like because like I hadn't told him about Sophie, and he described her and it sounded like exactly like the little girl that I saw. And I like, she like, her presence isn't threatening. It's not a negative thing. I think she just kind of like is a like lost kid who just attached herself to me, not in a bad way, but just for the want of wanting someone. So she's my little ghost and she doesn't bother us. She's just here. I call her Sophie. It was just a gut feel that was her name because sometimes you gotta listen to those. But that was kind of like my not negative ghost experience. But I'm gonna say the most negative thing was that Zach's brother, like the house he used to live at, that house was haunted as fuck.
Yeah, it was bad. Really bad.
And there was a night that I felt like absolute crap. We were staying over there, and when we stayed over there, we used to stay in like his brother's office, and they would blow up like a blow-up mattress for us. So Zach and his friends went to see Spider-Man: Homecoming, Far From Home.
I'm not sure. I don't remember
one in
what
London.
One
Far From Home.
Far From
Homecoming
Home, yeah.
was his return to Marvel. But it was like 1 a.m. and like I woke up and it felt like sleep paralysis, but I didn't hear anything. But it was pitch black, which like I know in the room it was not pitch black, but my eyes were open and all I could see were these like bright yellow eyes at my face. And like, you know how when you're in a room, like if you're third wheeling with a couple and that couple is arguing, you can feel that like negative energy. The energy I was feeling was horrible. Like it was horrifying, and I was alone in the room, and I woke up like my eyes still open and I could see again. So I just like dipped out and I slept on the couch. And when Zach got home, he was like, let's go upstairs. It's like, no, I don't wanna. And that was the last night that we stayed in that room.
I don't think that was the last time because like
I did not. No, that was the last time. The next time we just stayed on the couch.
I think my thing that happened to me with like a similar instance happened the time before that happened to you. I think.
When you
I mean,
heard
it makes sense for me to just like tie it in right now, but like I think it was the time right before then. when we went back to Erie and everything. We stayed with my brother again, and like he had his own office area where he had like all of his gaming equipment and everything. And like at that time, it was like somewhat tidy, so it was like everything was somewhat organized and everything. So we had like a blow up mattress on the floor and all of that. And he had like this giant light, or it wasn't giant, it was like a big ball that you could just like flick on and it would cycle through colors. And I remember before going to bed, like Em and I were like laying on the mattress or on the air mattress. Em ends up falling asleep. I'm laying there for a little bit, just scrolling through my phone and everything, and then eventually I fell asleep. But the light was on, circulating between all of the different colors. And then like in the middle of the night, like I don't know if it was sleep paralysis. I really can't tell whether or not it was sleep paralysis or if I actually like woke up and like I actually experienced this. I'm not entirely sure. Either way, the light like somehow got stuck to being on yellow. And in order for you to go and make it to where it stays on a specific color, you have to wait until it turns to that color and then press a little button, and then it would like sit on that color. So I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. Now that I'm thinking about it, it definitely was sleep paralysis because I wasn't able to move. But then it just like everything felt really, really off. And then the light started like flickering on and off, and then it completely cut. And then like same instance as what you were describing earlier, Dark, about how like it was like super dark in the room, but you could still see the general shape and everything. That same thing, except I'm laying down, staring directly at the ceiling. Because I was laying on my back and everything. And like over top of my head comes like this dark shadow. And then just like it like was like blinking, and it just like went like that, and then the two yellow eyes staring at me. I was like, fuck. And I was like, nah, this isn't happening, blah 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 blah. And like at that time, like I know that there's a lot of stuff going on with my family and everything. Like my mom literally just passed away, like probably a month before that experience, if even that. So like I kind of attributed it to the fact that like I was like not mentally there. And so like in my head the entire time I was like, Mom, help, Mom, get this shit away from me, like over and over and over again. And then eventually it just like disappeared completely. And that was like the craziest shit that I had happen at the house. But I had a few other experiences that happened there, but we can go back to M's story and everything. I just figured that I would tie that in right there because it kind of like all related. So yeah. Wow.
I mean,
Is
in
that really
terms
all
of
you
like,
had?
yeah, I mean, I've definitely gone places where you can just like feel. Like I went to my mom and I are both really into like paranormal stuff. We used to watch Ghost Hunters together all the time. And for her from a birthday, we went to a haunted house at Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. So we just like going to old creepy places together, and she visited me in Columbus at one point, so we went to Mansfield Reformatory. It was really cool, especially because I really like the movie Shawshank Redemption, and that's where it was filmed. And it was like in some places they have cardboard cutouts or like little plaques on the wall where like this scene was shot in this room. But there was one room we went into, and it was empty. It didn't have anything in it. Like it's not set up like a museum where they have like furniture and stuff. It's literally just a shell of a building, but it's still cool. And like it just felt like the air in the room just felt like a dead weight. And I went to my mom and I was like, this, like the energy just feels super oppressive. so I'm gonna leave. And I left. And we walked away, and she was like, she was like, that was the infirmary. I was like, oh, okay. It's like, yeah, I watched, what's the one with Zach Baggins? Ghost Adventures?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like they had gone, and that room was the one where they had gotten most of the activity, which, like, generally speaking, I don't give a lot of credence to Zach Baggins and his experiences. I think he's full of shit. But that, like, just being in that room, I don't doubt that maybe something that they caught was real. Yeah, I think sometimes it's more of an energy than an actual. I've definitely never had shit thrown around. Oh wait, that's not true. Your mom threw something at the back of your head the other day.
Yeah, a little tinfoil ball. And I thought M was like, so M came into the room and was like laying on the bed and everything. And like the way that our room is set up, like our doorway, not this one, this is our closet, but like right on the other side of the bookshelf is how you get into the hallway that you see behind M. And so she was in here laying down on the bed and everything. And then I guess M got up to go. I think you were going and doing something for work or working on Etsy stuff or whatever. And our dining room table used to be like right on the opposite side of the wall. And so she was sitting down in there. And the next thing I know, like I got hit in the back of the head by a little tinfoil ball. And I was like, why is she throwing shit at me? And so like I turned and she's not there. And like at that moment, she was like giggling about something that she was watching or something like that. And I was like, really? You're going to do that to me? You're going to throw something at me and like go into the other room? She's like, what are you talking about? I've been in here for like a minute now. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So it's just my mom messing around with me.
It's because you made fun of how she called soda carbonated beverage.
Yeah. Because we had a whole discussion on pop, soda, carbonated beverage, Coke, like all of that stuff. All the different terms that people use in order to call a carbonated beverage something.
What do they say in California? What do they say in California?
Like for soda?
Yeah.
I take it as soda.
Well, yeah. Well, it's hard for me because half of my family is like on the they're all Western, so Missouri, Oklahoma, so they call it pop. But over here in California, it's like either by the name or it's just called soda.
Yeah.
So I get like both of the names.
I feel like for East and West Coast, it's like soda, and then South is everything is called Coke, and they just call it by like it would be like Sprite Coke, or can I, something along those lines, which makes zero freaking sense to me, but it is what it is. And then like PA, Ohio, and then just straight down Central, it's like all pop. That's the reason why I grew up calling it pop, because
people in Eastern PA say soda. Don't hold them accountable for your sins. How are you gonna?
I'm not gonna lie.
I grew up like 40 minutes away from the border. Okay.
I feel like it's mixed.
I love that. I love that story though, because you could definitely tell that was probably your mom being like, "Shut up!" Like, be quiet.
100%. 100%. She like messes with me all the time.
I don't think Logan believes in ghosts.
What?
I don't think Logan believes in ghosts. He's never
really
once said anything. He kind of believes in aliens.
That doesn't surprise me.
But I don't think ghosts are on his radar.
Only kind of. So there's like a wide expanse of the universe, and there's a small part of his brain that thinks like we're it, like we capped out the life experience. Okay.
God.
I hard body believe in aliens. I think them shits are
100%.
real. I have like a gut conviction that I've been abducted by aliens. I don't want to talk about it. I just like it's a theory in my own head.
Future podcast idea.
Okay. Follow up to that.
With the same people.
Follow up to that. you think you may or may not have been abducted by aliens, right? And far be it from me to say you were or you weren't either way.
Okay.
But the concept that Helen Keller may have been both deaf
Oh my
and
God.
blind and did what she did, like that concept eludes you.
Yes.
I forgot about that. That's great.
She didn't exist.
Oh, real fast too.
You're
On
gonna
the
get so much
topic-
hate in the
I
comments.
know.
On the topic of you getting tinfoil thrown, I had, like, just to kind of like go into that too, because I forgot about this one. With so my grandfather passed when I was like 6, and we're very like, what do you say? It's not, I wouldn't really say like overall spiritual, but we kind of are in that sense. Like every night we sage the house, and then we do I don't sandalwood after the sage. So like we're big on the whole like free spirit, but bring in the good. And when my grandpa passed, when we got this new house, it would be just like UZ, like out of nowhere, like small little non like things that wouldn't hurt you.
Mhm.
Like for instance, mom was in the shower, my brother was gone doing his own thing, and then it was just me basically in my own room. And right at the door, there's a door literally right here, and that's the door. Excuse me. That's the door to get in and out of this room. Bathroom's right here. Closet's on the corner. Literally at the front door, there was a crumped up ball of just like tissues. And it's weird because the only tissues you can probably get in this house is inside the bathrooms. So, and I didn't see anything launched this way. It was just at my door. I heard a little thunk at like the door, open the door, and there's like just a big honking like rolled up ball of like tissue. And I was like, okay, well, brother's not here. Mom's in the shower. She's been in the shower for like not even 10 minutes, and she'll take her time, right? Like every mom and dad, they'll take their time to go take a shower, to go get like clean and nice. So I was like, there's no way she came out. I would have heard the door like completely open if
There would have
she's,
been
like,
wet footprints.
yeah, that too. And there was nothing. It was just a weird ball, and it was big. It was like probably like that size of just tissue, and it was thrown. And definitely like with Z, my grandpa, because little backstory, off topic for a second, but my dad wasn't really in the picture too much. So my grandpa, to me, he had Alzheimer's and passed from that. But while he was alive, like he was like the dad figure for a while. So it's like I know throughout the time of my life in general, I can tell he's come back just to say like, what's up, dude? Like, how you doing, kind of
What's
thing. Like,
good?
just throwing weird hints every once in a while. Like, you'll hear a weird knock out of nowhere, and it'll be like, it's almost his birthday. Like, his family, his side, like my mom's side, is all Puerto Rican, and from New York area. So Bronx, he lived in the Bronx, and his family and all of our family on that side is all Puerto Rican. And we've had experiences too where when it gets near his birthday, or like anything that has to do with him in that in that time span, like for a week straight a long time ago when we first got this house, and it was like almost like only a year of his passing, when his birthday week came around, the TV, you have to like set and go into the settings and everything and change the language. The language on the TV we don't ever touch is English. I mean, we all speak English. We don't know any other like languages. That TV that week would constantly change to Spanish for no reason.
Oh.
And then so like small hints, and then it stopped after that week and never got touched again. Then like the next year would roll by, it did the same thing, but only within like that 1 week, and it changed like once. And then now, like, just kind of what this was like last year or something like that, is when the ball hit the door and then plopped down, and I was like I said, brother's out, mom's literally in the bathroom, there's no way she got out. So it's like one of those things where like with Yuzi, your mom always gives you hints. It's like that's the same thing what happens with my grandpa, is he always throws some like weird hints out there, like, hey bro, I'm still here, like don't think I'm not around.
Yeah. No, I feel that, because like there was another time where M had to go into the office for work and everything, and like I was like, when she left and everything, like I was up, but I ended up like falling back asleep, which was really bad.
Typical.
Typical, excuse?
Typical.
Anyway, M's at the office and everything, and like out of nowhere I just hear Zachary like yell at me, like it was freaky, and it sounded exactly like my mom, but at the same time I'm like, all right, I know, like when I first woke up I was like, it's not my mom. Like if anything, then I think that, you know, it was M. She may have came home from work and saw that I was like sleeping, and she's like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? And like I woke up, I shot up, and I was like, yeah, and M was not anywhere in the apartment, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. So it's just my mom telling me like, get your act together.
Yes.
So yeah, luckily I was only out for like 5 minutes though, but still, yeah, freaked me out big time.
I feel like
yeah.
that happens to everybody like once in their life,
Oh,
though,
100%.
where it's like I can't remember a single time when I've asked a buddy of mine, like, oh bro, have you heard your like deceased family or something like that like scream out your name or whisper it in your ear, or even like
Yeah.
when you're awake or asleep, or but it's like always some like super vague, like, did I hear that? And you always know that it's like in the back of your head, you're always like, oh yeah, I heard that for sure.
Yeah. So I guess for my stories and everything, I'm gonna try and go in like a timeline in order for everything to kind of more so make sense. So like when I was little and everything, I grew up in Erie. Like all my whole family kind of lived together. Minus my real dad. My real dad's been out of the picture since I was like 2 or something like that, and like my stepdad has been around since I was like really young, 4 something. I don't know, something around there, 4 or 5. So we grew up in the house that I'm gonna be referencing a lot for my stories and everything. And for a while there, like my brother and my real dad still had like a good relationship and everything. So like when I was growing up, like going through middle school and everything, like my brother lived with my dad and like worked at I think he worked at a bar and grill at that time. And so like I really didn't have a relationship with my brother or my real dad in that matter, because my real dad, like, his priorities were not straight. Yeah, his priorities were not straight. So I usually only would go over there on the weekends, and I would be hanging out with my stepmom. And so yeah, that's all irrelevant to the story, but to just kind of give like some type of backstory, I guess. So then my brother ended up starting to work at the hospital with my mom, and he was like in a different division or whatever, but he still had to be at work at the same time that my mom did. So then my mom was like, well, in order to make things easier, why don't you just go and move back into the house with us? And then, you know, once you save up money and all of that, then you can go and move out and everything. And he's like, yeah, it doesn't sound like a bad idea. So he ends up moving into the attic. Prior to him moving into the attic, literally nothing was up there, like except for decorations and stuff. But the way that our attic was is you had like the main area, and then like off to the side, like the left side, there was like a little bar counter that stuck out, but then there was like a little doorway, so you came up like the steps, and then right to the right there was a doorway for like a back room. So that we ended up putting all of the decorations and stuff into the back room. So after like a couple years of my brother living with us and everything, he meets his girlfriend at the time, Nancy, who is the mother of my niece Chloe. And so that's like kind of where the stuff really starts to happen, because prior to that, like my brother, the only real experiences that he had was he had a friend when he was in high school that ended up like completing suicide. And my brother was like convinced that he was around just like messing with him. Like he would go and move his stuff around like his room and everything. And so he was like, oh, that's really funny, Josh, like ha ha ha, you got me, kind of thing. And so like at that time, that's like when I started like really, like when he went and got like when he and Nancy first got together and everything, like I was sitting there and like I started becoming more and more friends with my brother, and like actually like going up to his room and like playing games with him and all of this other stuff. And that is where stuff starts getting like a little crazy. So like there was one night where I was like upstairs in the attic with my brother, or we're both like, I think we were playing Madden or something like that, or maybe it was Oblivion, one of the two. Those were like our two games that we would always go to and play. But we're like sitting there and like we're starting to hear like scratching and stuff coming from like the back room, and like there was a way for like squirrels and stuff to get up into our roof if they really wanted to. There were multiple occasions where my brother had like squirrels or bats or something like going around up in the attic. But like this specific instance, like the scratching sounded drastically different. And we're like, what the hell is that? And so like my brother like stood up and like he like peered into the back room, because there's no door on the back room. Like the only thing that he had up was like a sheet in order to like make it to where it was easily accessible, but like it wasn't there per se. So he just like kind of like stretched it back, and like the scratching and everything stopped, and he's like, I don't know what that is. So he comes back and sits down, and like, you know, like the old like grinding wheels that like people would like go and turn to like sharpen knives and stuff. That's what it sounded like. There was like the squeak of it, but then there was like a grinding noise. And we're like, what the fuck? And so like he stood up and he went back into there again, and he's like, all right, whatever's like messing around back here, can you just like stop, like kind of freaking us out and everything, blah blah blah. And then he goes back and sits down. He had a rocking chair sitting next to like the bar area, because obviously he didn't really use the bar area. I think like the only thing that he had up there was a mini fridge where he would put like his soda and stuff. And so like the rocking chair starts like slightly moving, just like a little bit, to where it could be kind of like a wind if you really looked at it, but then like it started like getting more and more aggressive. And the noise started picking up too. And then like at that same time where we're hearing both of these things, watching the rocking chair and everything, like clear as day, both my brother and I heard like a little Indian boy. Like you could hear like it, you could tell that it was like that accent, and you could tell that it was like a small child, and it said, help us, he has a knife. And like then everything like clicked. We're like, oh shit, like no, this makes sense. So my brother and I just go flying down the steps. We're out of there. I think my brother ended up sleeping on the couch. I like went up to my room and everything once it came time for me to go to bed and all that. So that was like one instance. And then I want to say probably like 6 or 7 months after that, my brother had Nancy over and everything. They were like upstairs hanging out upstairs in the attic, and my brother came down to go and get like popcorn because I think they were going to watch a movie or something. Nancy stayed upstairs, but the way that the stairs went is like from the bottom floor, you went up to the first landing and then you turned to go up another landing, and that's where like our second floor is. But then the door for the attic is like right to the left of that landing. So then you could go up. So like the stairs are all overlapping each other. So like anybody that comes down the attic stairs, you can hear that they're coming down or going up them. And like I think it was only my sister Katrina and I that were home, and we were like in the basement. Or not in the basement, in the living room. And Gabe came down the steps and everything, went into the kitchen to go and make popcorn. Nancy stayed upstairs. Next thing you know, you hear like a second set of footprints coming down the steps, and we're like, oh, Nancy's coming down. No one came down. No, like you didn't hear any doors open for them to like for her to go to like the bathroom or anything. We're like, what the hell? That's kind of weird. And then you heard it again coming down again, and that was the one that was Nancy coming down because she heard the footsteps, thinking that Gabe was coming up, and Gabe didn't like show up, and she's kind of wondering where he was. So she made it to the first landing of the stairs in the attic, and something pushed her to where she fell down the steps. And this was the time in which she was pregnant with my niece Chloe, so like everyone was freaking out. My brother was like, holy shit, like, you know, this could be an issue. So then they get it all sorted out and everything, and she goes to the doctors, everything's fine and all that. But then they were asking like what happened and all that, and she's like, I did not trip, I was pushed down the steps. Like over and over again, she just kept saying that. And like my brother's like, I mean, I believe it, but like no one else is really gonna believe us, you know. So that was like, I think one of the scariest like instances in which something like actually happened, to where it like, yeah. But relating back to that earlier rocking chair, that was the rocking chair that my grandpa had. And when he passed away, my brother got the rocking chair. So my brother has had this rocking chair nonstop since, you know, whenever my grandpa like gave it to him. So when he went and moved into his new house, he didn't have the rocking chair originally. And when he first moved into the house, the first couple times that Em and I went and visited and everything was fine. Yeah, there was like nothing that was really like off-putting. Like they didn't really have any experiences that happened in the house or anything. Then like my mom passed away, and we went to the house to go and clean it out. And my brother was like, oh shit, like the rocking chair's upstairs. Let me go and grab it. You know, like he took the rocking chair from the attic where there's like this really like dark presence in that back room and all this other stuff. And my brother had himself convinced that like the back room was closed off, and he had like a crucifix above the door. So he's like, oh, nothing's gonna happen. It's up there. It's perfectly fine. Blah, blah, blah. So he takes the rocking chair with him to his new house that he had and everything. And that's when everything started happening, where Em and I had like those experiences with the dark figure with the glowing eyes and all of that other stuff. But there was like a couple other things that was happening to them, where they were seeing like this dark little girl, like peering around corners and like knocking and all this other stuff. So it was pretty wild, like in that sense. I don't really know those stories too well, so I don't feel comfortable sharing them. But there was one specific time that happened once Em and I started staying downstairs in the living room, where Em fell asleep first. Shocker. Happens every single day. Anyway, we're going. I'm sitting down there watching.
Bitch, okay.
I'm sitting down there watching, like, I don't even remember what I was watching. I think I was watching Ghost Adventures because I think it's hilarious, like how shit their production value is, but like it's funny to watch. But then like I was watching Matt Santoro videos. I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he does like the top 100s and all that. And he had like a paranormal video on or whatever. And then like all of a sudden the TV started like flickering channels, and like would turn off and then turn back on, and like I was hearing like noises and all that other stuff, and my brother's upstairs in the office, like in his office, and like I noticed that some of the lights were like flickering, so I'm like, maybe it's because of the storm that like the the power is kind of like getting all wonky and all of that. Didn't really explain the channel switching, but at least like everything turning on and off. So then I called my brother to come down, and for some reason my brother's phone, instead of being in the office with him, was in the studio that his ex-fiance, like, she had for her art and everything, which he doesn't go in there at all, because that like was her space, and like she would do art there. So it was in there for some reason, vibrating, and he's looking around because he thinks that it's in like his office or whatever. He finally finds it and he answers me, and he's like, dude, what's going on? And I was like, you need to come downstairs because shit's like happening and all that. As he's coming downstairs, there was like a dark figure that like, so in order to go into like their little dining room area, there's the living room, and then there's like a big archway, and then the dining room's like right there. Like you could see that it like grabbed it and like peeked around, and like my brother saw it as well. So my brother and myself saw it. I was freaking out, but I didn't want to wake Emma up because she was laying there like on top, like cuddled with me, and I'm like, okay, can you just stay down here for a little bit? Like I don't want to like go, like I don't want to go upstairs because obviously you're doing stuff in the office, and I'm never sleeping in that room period again because it's freaking creepy. So like, yeah, that was one of like the weirdest experiences that I had. Like that house, whatever was at my childhood home, I think is associated with my brother and also with the rocking chair, because I noticed that like I think it was a mixture of just like his own personal like well-being. Like whenever he gets in like a high space, it kind of like goes away, but then when he gets in a low space, like a lot of weird shit is happening around him. But then also on top of that, like I feel like it's mostly associated with the rocking chair because there's so much energy that's related to that rocking chair. And like I believe that my grandpa, because he was in the army or in the Navy, sorry, and he was like stationed on a boat or something. I can't remember exactly where he was at, but like I know that he got the rocking chair while he was overseas, had it shipped back to like the America or like to the United States. So like obviously that's fucking expensive to do that, number one, and number two, so like ever since then it was like in our family and everything, and my brother loved it. So like my grandpa gave it to him. So I don't know if like where he got it from, like there was already shit like wrong with it or what, but it is what it is. But there is one last story that I have, which is like hands down the freakiest thing that's ever happened to me personally. So when I went to college and everything, my best friend Terry, his mom passed away, so he ended up moving in with my family and taking my room. So my stepdad went and finished the basement. So then I had a room when I came back from college, like on breaks and everything. So I had one of those like locks where you like slit it to go into the wall, and then on the other side it had like the little hook latch. So the hook latch was on the outside, the inside was the sliding bolt. So like every single night I would slide the bolt, because otherwise if you're inside the room and you don't slide the bolt, the door would open just because of the way that like the door was mounted and all that. So like I always had that thing closed, and I know that I did because like when I would go to bed, like I would have it closed no matter what. And at night I fell asleep, and I had sleep paralysis, and during the sleep paralysis my door was wide open, like it started creaking open and went completely open, and then like out in the hallway, because like going up like my door was right next to where you would go up the steps from the basement. There's that big giant dark figure again, like the exact same one that I saw when I was at my brother's house. Obviously my brother's house experience happened way after this experience did, because I was still in college when this happened. Like I ended up waking up and my door was wide open, and obviously nothing was there, but like I was like completely confused because I know that the door was closed when I went to bed. So I have had stuff happen to me ever since I was like a little kid to now with the whole Sophie thing. Granted, like a lot of this experiences now that I'm away from my childhood home and stuff, and like not really necessarily living with my family anymore. Like they're not malicious as they were when I was a little kid. So yeah, wild. I know that was a lot to cover right there, and I feel really bad for chewing your guys' ears off, but yeah.
I do have to say, I think my favorite experience was the one where that dark figure peeked around the corner in your brother's house, because I slept through all of it. I love spooky shit I don't have to deal with.
Period. I wonder if that like extra room in the attic was like a disappointments room or something like that.
So like while I was growing up, this was even before my brother moved in. My stepdad and I, there's like right down the street, there's a church. And at that church, like they would host like summer youth events or something like that, through like the YMCA and stuff. So I would always get enrolled in that each year because I always loved it, because a lot of my friends from school would go to it too. So like I would go there, and while my stepdad was picking me up the one day, he actually met not the previous owner, but the owner that had it before the previous owner. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. So 2 owners ago, like one of the original owners. And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, yeah, that house was great. And she was like really off about it like the entire time. And my stepdad's like, oh, if you ever want to come over so we can show you like all the renovations we did and all that, like you're more than welcome to, like, just, here's my number, call me up, and like we'll walk you through it and everything. And so like eventually, like months later or whatever, she ended up coming over for dinner and talking to us about like the history of the house and all of that other stuff. But like you could tell that it was very like, it felt very scripted in the sense that she was like leaving out like major chunks of things. And so like we're like going and giving her a tour of everything, and like ever since like when we moved into the house, like the attic was like literally nothing except for plywood on the floor to where you could probably fall through and through the ceiling of the second floor, to like then having some like wood paneling that was put up and stuff like that. So like even though it wasn't the nicest up there, like my stepdad at least did something with it in order to kind of like separate the spaces. And he's like, oh, if you want to go up there and like look and everything, I can show you come to some of the stuff that we started working on. And she's like, no. And my stepdad was like, okay, like if you don't want to go up there, that's fine. And she's like, no, I refuse to go up there.
Oh,
and he was like, okay, that's kind of weird. But actually now that I said that, I actually remembered. So my grandma is very, very in tune with like her spirituality and all of that. She actually has a friend that lives in Lilydale, I believe is what it's called. It's like a medium kind of town, I guess you could say. Like there's a bunch of mediums that live there. So I've gone there a couple times. It's actually really fun. But like my grandma is very in tune with that, not to the sense to where she can like go and read people and be like, oh yeah, you have this spirit attached to you or whatever, but she can like really feel like negative energies and shit like that are like present. And so like the very first time that she ever visited us in Erie, came to our childhood home and all of that, and like we go and give the tour and everything, she refused to go into the basement, and she tried going into the attic, started walking up the steps, ended up feeling extremely nauseous, and then having to sit down on the steps because she was said I feel very overwhelmed and I feel like I'm getting strangled right now. And so then like we left the attic, and she's like, yeah, I will never ever go up there again. So still to this day, she will not go up into the attic or into the basement. So yeah, wild. It is wild. And that's why
That's
I'm
super
very
crazy.
happy that I do not live there anymore, nor will I ever live there again. And I barely really get an opportunity to go and visit my sister. I'm sure like I could go back there if I really wanted to, but I don't like the feelings that are associated with the house, and that's why I'm like really surprised that my sister wanted to buy the house for my stepdad when my mom passed away. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got now that I think I've talked for probably like 15-20 minutes, if not longer.
So to round us out, and I'm gonna finish up on mine. My ghost stories are not that scary, honestly. So the house that I lived in most of my childhood, there was lots of ghosts in there, but none of them were very mean. The original owner of the home did die in the home because of an illness. He didn't die of malicious ways. He was just sick. I don't remember exactly how. But that's not where he's not related to my story at all. So there was, my room was very haunted for some reason. I don't know why. I think I just have a lot of ghosts. I pick them up, I think. But there was a child that would always just hang out in my room and just like be there. I would see like seat prints on my bed, and like I could see him in my room. He was like a very old timey clothes and everything, like very like Victorian age kind of thing. And the one day, it was very late at night, and this was when I was in high school, so I was like, you can't be here, I got things to do, you gotta go. So I'm like telling him to leave, and then the door, this was when I was weird and would sleep only with my bedroom door open, which now I couldn't even think of. But for a long time I slept with my door open. And then in my doorway, his either his mom or his like nanny or something came and was like, come on, it's time to go. And they like escorted him out of my room. And he would just kind of come back and like hang out every now and again. There's also one part of my room that had way more activity. So my room was just a square. Normally I was in like the far right side of it, and eventually I moved my bed into like the left corner. And I would have candles and everything in my room, and the flame would just like go. It never like stood still. It would always be moving around and doing weird things. So there's always just like little stuff that happened in my house. But my mom was also very, very interested in paranormal stuff and all that. She had friends that did some minor paranormal investigations throughout our town and surrounding towns. And there's this one place, I think it's a bridge. I don't exactly remember the name of it, but there was a woman who had committed suicide off this bridge. She had hung herself. And while I was there with my mom and my sister, it sounds so bad because I don't remember all the details, but I was looking over at something and no one was around me, and I feel a hand just touch the middle of my back and just kind of push. I turn around thinking it was my sister messing with me, and she was nowhere near me. So that was a big thing that like stuck with me, is I was actually moved. But other like
It's rude.
that was probably the scariest thing that I've had happen to me, other than my Ouija board spelling demonic names to me. But you know, that was in the house that was very haunted in like my childhood home. The house we live in now, I still think is haunted. I don't know with what, but I think that someone's here, because I get really freaked out if I'm anywhere in this house alone. Like I'll turn my head and there's just something like in the corner of my eye, like moving around, or just like shadows. But I don't think
The one that you and Logan live in now?
Yeah, like if he's not home, like I see stuff all the time. He scares the shit out of me constantly, because I always think that there's someone in the other room, and then he'll show up in the doorway and just be like, I'm here, and I jump out of my skin every time. So I just had a lot of little things happen to me, nothing like repetitive or crazy. But yeah.
Still though, the pushing in the back is just like anything that like relates to somebody like getting physically moved by a spirit, just like really always freaks me out. Always. Like I 100% believe that Nancy got pushed down the steps. Like 100% believe, because there's no way that she'd be like, oh yeah, you know, I tripped, but I'm gonna go and blame it that I got pushed. Like if she tripped, she probably would have said, yeah, I just tripped down the steps, and that's the reason why. But like that's the same thing. Like You're saying that no one is near you when you're getting pushed. Like, yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's crazy.
I don't know.
That like they have that much energy that they can touch you.
Oh, 100%.
I guess
100.
that's a question that we can ask each other. Because I know you've messed with a Ouija board. Has anybody messed with any of those like spiritual items?
I want to say the only thing that I've ever done was that Charlie thing or whatever, you know, where it had like the two pencils or whatever, and then you would do yes, no. That was like the only thing that I ever messed with, and it didn't do anything. So, at least for me, that is really the only thing that I've done outside of like going and downloading like a little EP thing on my phone, like app-wise, and just like laying it down and like talking to see if I got anything back. And like there's a couple things here and there where it was like somebody like talking, but like could have been really anything. But yeah, I think that's like my only experience with the games and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've never done any of that like crazy stuff like Bloody Mary or anything. I was always scared of those, and I don't know if I believe in those because they're games. But the thought of it always kind of freaked me out, so I've never done that.
But you'll go and play with a Ouija board?
No, it's different.
Like I said, I used a Ouija board. But I'm gonna say like growing up, all I knew of was a Ouija board. And then like in my spiritual practice, I've used a pendulum, but more so like as an introspective tool with my own energy. And I know that there are people who like will open themselves up to like being to like use a pendulum to communicate with spirits, but I am not comfortable with being a conduit for any spirits because you don't know what you're opening yourself up to. I think like I just don't want to be the white girl in a horror movie that ends up being possessed by some prince of hell and then I'm tied to a bed floating like 5 feet in the air.
I think the worst thing I've ever I've never messed with those kind of things, like Ouija boards. No, I'll never mess with one. I've seen them in action. I've been in the area while they're in action, and I've had nothing but bad, like, small experiences. And those were, like, they were bad enough to be like, okay, don't mess with those. Like, pennies and, like, metal, like, heavier objects in that area would get thrown. And I'm like, okay, no, I'm not messing with those. The one that I've had in my hands, never wanted it in my possession, was we were offered from one of my mom's Jewish like grandmother's friend or something like that. We were offered 3 Dybbuk boxes, and I told my mom, I was like, nope. If you don't know what those are, trust me, you don't want them. And she that was the one time that she could like fully understand, because I was older by this time. I was like 15, 16, and I was like, I know enough about these things, trust me, say no. You're literally gonna have hauntings of demonic entities throughout your entire life if you even touch those damn boxes.
I have seen a terrible video of a guy. He bought a Dybbuk box, and the whole time he's not really taking it seriously. He knows how awful they are, but he's not taking it seriously, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
He then goes in this video and he opens it, and as it's like being pried open, you see a shadow hand come out and is like shake, and it like moves way faster than like a human. And like you can see it, and I've watched this video multiple times, and there's no way to explain where that hand is coming from. And those things terrify me.
Send inside mods and members chat. I want to see this vid.
Okay,
Yeah.
I will. But yeah,
Or-
they would terrify me. The worst Ouija board experience I have was a homemade Ouija board. It was like paper, very, very sketchy. I don't remember what was said on this board, but I remember I had to stop because it sent me into a full blown panic attack. I couldn't move. I was like crying. I had chills, like shaking. It was bad. And the people I was playing with had very, very bad energy, and I realized that now. I didn't know it at the time, but as I got older, I was like, yeah, that was the worst option I could have made that night.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I guess one of the last things I would say then is, has anybody been close to other kind of spiritual people, like what do you call them? Well, I mean, for instance, like, have you talked to a priest or a like those kind of people? Have you talked to like demonologists, people that are into like demon and Satanism? Like, have you talked to any of like the spiritual people that are with that kind of category of like what they do?
Nah.
No, definitely not a pastor. Jesus and I broke up a while ago. It's been a minute since I've been in a church.
Yeah. I think it'd be very interesting though to talk to someone.
I do have to say, I think like with like communicating with the dead, I think I take some of people's words with a grain of salt, because I think like 100%, I think with like intuitive writing, you can kind of, if you get in that meditative state, just kind of like connect with the spirit. But I think a lot of people have kind of made up ritual around some of it. Like, I don't necessarily believe if you're using a Ouija board and you want to end the session, like, you have to circle goodbye twice and say goodbye out loud. Because I think if you're going to get possessed, a demon's not going to give a fuck if you say a polite goodbye to them. That as much as...
Committing war crimes, I see.
All the time.
Like, I think we have made up a lot of like social graces that a spirit, a ghost, a demon, a poltergeist, whatever you want to say you're talking to, like, they're just gonna disregard. Niceties mean nothing to them. They're dead.
Right.
True.
I think the only time I've ever actually like been close to like any person, like human being, that is physically going after like spirits, I've had one where it was a priest, and he was just talking in general about like ghosts and like what your experiences are, blah blah blah. But then the other one is, we play airsoft and we like go and do airsoft stuff. We do have a buddy, and he carries all the time. He's a Satanist, so he has the Satanist Bible, that version instead. And like, you want to talk about ghost stories, that dude has like things that are attached to him that he shows a new video like every day to us and our buddies, that he like every day there's like a new scratch and like dent on his door, like all this other crazy stuff. So like, I've come in contact with a few of like all different kind of spiritual stuff. You got the good with the priests and all the pastors and all that, but then I also have people that are like on the whole other side of the spectrum that do like other crazy stuff. And the only reason why I talk to the kid or the guy that deals with the Satanist stuff is he's more lenient with that kind of stuff. He would never cast a quote unquote spell or anything or a curse on any of us because he likes us and we've talked to him for now like 6 years, 7 years, so we're pretty close with him, and he's cool. And for him, like to do that Satanist stuff, that's more of a hobby, and he does that like in closed doors, doesn't want to mess with like any humans. He just wants to do it for his own pleasure. So he does it to himself more than anybody else.
Absolutely wild.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we have talked about a lot today.
Oh yeah.
So I think personally my favorite story that was shared was definitely Dark's crazy scratch mark thing. It creeps me out. But let us know what your favorite story is in the comments below. Make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the like button. It greatly helps us. Outside of that, closing thoughts, I think it was pretty successful. I think that we had a lot of good stories and conversations. So.
I think there should be a Spooky Squad reunion.
Heard.
Right.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think that's all we got time for today. So if you have any other additional topics that you want us to go ahead and cover at a future date, make sure to go and leave them in the comments. Until next time, guys. Yeah. Bye.